Welcome to Reformed Thinking. In this explainer, we're going to get into a huge question by looking at John Calvin's Institutes. What is real religion, anyway? You hear a lot of different definitions out there, but Calvin gives us a really clear step-by-step way to think about it. Right, and let's be clear about what he's asking. Calvin's not really concerned with just the outward stuff, the rituals or traditions. He's digging much deeper. He wants to know what makes religion pure and real from the inside. So Calvin gives us the answer right at the beginning. But to really get what he means by words like willing reverence or legitimate worship, we have to see how he builds his case. The real genius here is in the logic, the step-by-step argument he lays out. Exactly. And his argument starts with knowing God. Before you can even begin to talk about religion, you have to get a handle on what it means to actually know God, not just know some facts about him. And check out how specific this is. For Calvin, this knowledge isn't some vague, fuzzy feeling. It's a solid persuasion, a real conviction that God is the source, the fountain of all good. And because of that, there's nowhere else to look. So here's why that matters. If God is the one and only source of all good things, wisdom, truth, all of it, then a couple of things have to follow. First, we have to learn to expect these things from him, to actually seek them from him. And then, second, when we get them, we have to give him the credit with thankfulness. Right. This idea of God being the source of everything good isn't just a fact to store in your brain. For Calvin, this knowledge has to spark a response in us. And that's the next link in the chain he's building. You can see the progression right here. It's a chain of cause and effect. Knowing God's benefits is what leads to piety. And then piety becomes the soil where real religion can actually grow. You can't skip a step. Okay, so piety is the bridge connecting our knowledge of God to actual religion. That means we've got to nail down what piety is. What are we talking about when we use that word? So what is it? Calvin says piety is reverence that's joined together with love for God. But look at where it comes from. It's a response that's induced by knowing his benefits. It's not something we can just work up on our own. It flows directly from who God is and what he's done. Let's break these two parts down. Reverence is how we respond to God as our Lord and Judge. It's about respecting his authority, his majesty, and obeying him. But that's joined with love, which is how we respond to him as our Father. And that love changes everything. It motivates us in a way that goes way beyond just being afraid of getting punished. And this quote from Calvin just nails it. He says that true piety means that even if hell didn't exist, we would still shudder at the thought of offending God. The reason we obey comes from loving and revering him, not just from trying to avoid the consequences. Okay, so we've got the foundation. Knowing God leads to piety, and piety is this mix of reverence and love. Now we can go back to that first definition of pure religion and see how all those pieces click into place. And now it all makes sense. It starts with faith, which is tied to an earnest fear of God. But that fear isn't just terror, it includes willing reverence, which is that heart of piety we just talked about. And all of that, together, leads to what Calvin calls legitimate worship. And Calvin adds a really important clarification here about that legitimate worship part. He warns that it's not about big, flashy, showy ceremonies. Real worship has to have sincerity of heart. And he points out that's often the very thing that's missing when the focus is just on the outward show. But there's one last piece to this puzzle that Calvin brings up, and it's a big one. He says that this knowledge of God we've been talking about isn't all the same. There are actually two ways we know God. Calvin lays out these two ways of knowing God. First, there's knowing God as the Creator, the one we see in the universe around us. This is how Adam would have known God before the fall. But because of the fall, a second kind of knowledge is now absolutely necessary, knowing God as the Redeemer, which we can only see in the face of Christ. And this is the point for us today. For a fallen people, just knowing God as a powerful creator isn't enough to make him seem friendly or kind. Because of our sin, that knowledge by itself would just show us a righteous judge we can't possibly please. We need reconciliation. So you see how Calvin brings it all together? It's a logical flow. Knowing God's goodness leads to piety, and piety is what gives birth to real religion. Which leaves us with a final question to think about. If all that's true, what does it tell us about where a genuine spiritual life has to begin?